I want to do a little experiment with you guys. I promise it won't hurt. Close your eyes. Go on, there's not going to be any jump scares or anything. Now, I want you to imagine a character based on my description. They're a badass half-demon warrior with white hair, a giant sword, dressed in all red, and they fight demons on a day-to-day basis, accompanied by a pretty girl who resembles a person he had a strong connection to in the past, and he's occasionally harassed by his brother that wants a memento left by one of their parents. Now, open your eyes and let's see who you thought of. Not quite, but close. What I meant was Dante, main character of Capcom's iconic hack-and-slash series Devil May Cry. Yes, I know, this is my third Capcom review in a row. I swear it's completely unintentional! Now, I didn't grow up with Devil May Cry, only playing the third game in high school and a demo of the fourth game. It wasn't until this year that I finally gave the series a fair shot. Get ready for the Devil May Cry Marathon, where I'll be looking at every game in the Devil May Cry series to see if these classics of the PS2 and PS3 era still hold up today. To quote Dante himself,
"Let's rock, baby."
Before we get into the original Devil May Cry, there's a bit of history to cover that helps explain the overall design of the game. Right after development on Resident Evil 2 ended in 1998, Hideki Kamiya and his team were tasked with developing a then-untitled Resident Evil 4 game for the upcoming PlayStation 2. Rather than creating a prettier Resident Evil 2, Kamiya wanted to create a more action-focused title. Resident Evil 2 writer Noboru Sugimura created a basic scenario about Tony Redgrave, a man with superhuman abilities investigating a gothic castle and fighting monsters. Then Resident Evil series producer Shinji Mikami felt that this pitch strayed too far from Resident Evil's survival horror roots, and convinced Kamiya and his team to turn it into its own original game unconnected to the Resident Evil franchise. Side note, how ironic is it that the first attempt at an action-focused Resident Evil was canned, while the later Gears of War-inspired entries were greenlit with no issue? Anyway, Kamiya's Resident Evil 4 pitch was slightly rewritten, the monsters created by the Umbrella Corporation were changed into demons, Tony Redgrave was changed to Dante, and a $1 million franchise was born. Devil May Cry begins with our hero Dante sitting in his office at the Devil May Cry Demon Hunting Agency. Suddenly, he's attacked by a beautiful blonde woman on a motorcycle. Talk about your attention-grabbing intros. It's here that we learn that Dante is the half-demon, half-human son of Sparta, a powerful demon who rebelled against the forces of the underworld and defended humanity until his death. The mysterious woman, named Trish, tells Dante that Mundus, the lord of the underworld who was sealed by Sparta, has been freed, and is seeking to open a gate to the underworld on Malay Island, unleashing a horde of demons to conquer the human world. Dante notices that Trish looks suspiciously like his dead mother, and agrees to help her stop Mundus. They arrive at Malay Island, and Trish decides to split up with Dante so they can cover more ground. After this intro, the plot pretty much takes a backseat until the end, with the only cutscenes in between serving to introduce new enemies and bosses. Dante ventures his way through the various parts of the island, occasionally encountering a demon clad in armor known as Nello Angelo that seems to be drawn to Dante while also being repelled by his necklace, a memento from his mother. During their final encounter, Nello Angelo sheds his helmet, revealing himself to be Dante's long-lost brother Virgil. Dante defeats him, freeing him from Mundus's control. After venturing into the heart of the castle and passing through to the underworld, Dante learns that Trish is a double agent who's actually been serving Mundus all along. Dante finally reaches Mundus's location, and the two exchange insults before Mundus attempts to kill Dante. However, Trish gets in the way at the last moment, taking the fatal blow meant for him and freeing herself from Mundus's influence. Enraged by this, Dante's sword awakens its true power, and the two demons face off. After defeating Mundus, Dante mourns the death of Trish, uttering the greatest line in a Capcom game since Iris' death scene in Mega Man X4.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Pure poetry. Dante leaves his sword and his mother's necklace with Trish's body, and attempts to escape from the castle, which is now falling apart due to Mundus's apparent death. Right as Dante is about to reach the entrance, he's stopped by Mundus. What is it with Capcom villains not wanting to stay dead? Dante is seemingly outmatched, until Trish shows up alive and well and imbues Dante's guns with enough power to destroy Mundus once and for all. The two escape in a plane and fly off into the sunrise. Our story finally ends with Dante back at his shop, now renamed Devil Never Cry, learning of a new job from Trish, now his partner. They suit up and head out, and the credits roll. The story is very basic, and most of the details about Dante's backstory, the story of Sparta, and Mundus are never really delved into in any depth. On the one hand, this keeps the game from being bogged down with cutscenes and keeps the action flowing. On the other hand, this means that details like Trish being a servant of Mundus, Dante even having a brother at all, and more seemingly come out of nowhere without any proper foreshadowing. I'll go ahead and say it, the plot is the weakest part of Devil May Cry. However, that's not what the game is remembered for, is it? Devil May Cry was the progenitor of the 3D hack-and-slash genre that later gave birth to titles like God of War, Castlevania Lords of Shadow, and Bayonetta. As Dante, you start out with two main weapons, his sword and his twin pistols, while you discover more melee weapons known as Devil Arms and guns along the way, each with their own unique abilities and movesets. For example, the Alistair sword allows Dante to use lightning attacks and strike quickly, while the Ifrit gauntlets grant him fire-based abilities. Dante also has access to an ability called Devil Trigger, which temporarily transforms him into a demonic form. When Devil Trigger is activated, Dante's attack power and speed are increased, his health automatically regenerates, and he gains additional abilities based on whatever Devil Arm he currently has equipped. When you fight enemies, you're given a grade based on the variety of attacks you use, as well as how long you can keep your combo going. These grades range from D to S, and your overall combat performance, as well as how long it takes you to complete each level, determines your final grade. Defeating enemies, breaking parts of the scenery, attacking certain statues, and completing levels with a high grade rewards you with red orbs. Red orbs are primarily used for buying new abilities and items, either at designated statues or in between chapters, but they are also occasionally used to break through red barriers. There are other orb types as well. Green orbs refill your health, yellow orbs give you extra lives, and blue and purple orbs extend your health and Devil Trigger meters respectively. These can be either found by exploring or by buying them at the shop. On the subject of exploration, Devil May Cry shows its roots as a rejected Resident Evil 4 pitch by placing you in a large, interconnected map littered with hidden items, weapons, and challenges for those who venture off the main path. Dante can also examine various pieces of scenery, adding a bit of character to both Dante and his surroundings. One feature that Devil May Cry has that other games in the genre, including many of its own sequels, don't have, is the ability to return to earlier sections of the game, adding some minor Metroidvania elements. Did you see a blue orb fragment that you can't reach? Come back to it later when you have the abilities and items you need. Most areas, barring a few, can be explored later in the game, so there's rarely a risk of screwing yourself out of 100% completion. What else is Devil May Cry known for? Difficulty. This game is punishing, in ways that I feel conflicted about. Enemies deal a lot of damage with each hit, and you're not given many defensive options. You can only carry one healing item at a time. Enemies don't drop green orbs often. You have a limited number of lives that don't replenish between levels. The prices of items increase every time you buy them, and checkpoints are scarce. It keeps you on your toes at all times, but at times it feels a bit unfair due to archaic design. I can't knock it too hard because it was innovating a whole new genre, but these are still faults that can put off newcomers. This is where I should also mention that I'm playing the PS4 re-release of Devil May Cry as part of the Devil May Cry HD collection, which alters the control scheme a bit. The original PS2 version uses different controls that are much more clunky and awkward, but the HD collection changes them to match the control style used in the sequels. If you're thinking of tracking down a PS2 copy, keep this in mind. Graphically, Devil May Cry reeks of early PS2 graphics. While the HD collection makes everything look crisp on an HD TV, there's not much Capcom can do to make something this primitive look pretty outside of a full-on remake in the vein of the Crash Insane trilogy. There are occasional frame drops as the game tries to run at 60 FPS, but it's never too noticeable. Also, the cutscenes are obviously compressed and of lower quality than the in-game graphics, which can be fairly jarring the first time you see them. I know that sacrifices had to be made to make everything fit on a single DVD in 2001, but I feel like this is something that could have been fixed for the HD collection. Animations can be janky at times too. There's lots of clipping with Dante's jacket, the mouth movements rarely, if ever, match the spoken dialogue, and scenes like this, where Dante should have some kind of wound instead of just a bit of blood on him in one shot that disappears in the next. The music ranges from atmospheric drones during exploration to hard rock instrumental pieces during battles. I didn't find any of it to be particularly memorable, but it was never grating either, so I can't call it a negative point. Voice acting is, well, it seems like Capcom didn't learn from their mistakes with their PS1 games voice acting, and everyone ranges from monotone to that. Also, the script is incredibly cheesy, with Dante coming off as less of an unflappable badass and more like a studio executive's idea of what teenagers would find cool. Time for the verdict. Devil May Cry is an enjoyable experience today, but it definitely suffers from what I like to call first game syndrome. It's the issue that plagues the first installments in almost every big franchise, where the developers are still testing the waters to see what works and what doesn't in terms of gameplay and story. There's nothing game-breaking in there, but it's the kind of game where you have to go into it with a certain mindset to enjoy it to its fullest, so your mileage may vary. Devil May Cry was a smashing success upon its release, selling over 1 million copies worldwide and receiving critical acclaim from magazines at the time. Dante himself became one of Capcom's most popular characters, and plans for a sequel were immediately put into place. Tune in next time when the Devil May Cry marathon continues with a look at Devil May Cry 2. Surely it'll be even better, right?